Can I ask a quick question?
Just a second. Greetings, everyone. It is the 5th of September. This is Content Evolution New World. Delighted to have you with us. Today, we're talking about Earth-centered design and beyond. Why human-centered design is no longer enough. And I'm joined here with Mike McGuire, my co-host on the West Coast. How are you, Mike?
I'm doing very well today. Hope everybody's doing well too. I'm very interested in this topic. It's going to be an interesting discussion.
I've actually got some positive feedback on the topic ahead of time, so it's if nothing, it's provocative, right? So we'll go from there. Just going to put in a advertisement ahead of time. Our regular call will take place at a different time next week because we have a guest, Joachim Wirtz. Joachim is at the National University of Singapore. So to get him to join us in his time zone, we need to make a time accommodation. However, I'm thinking that before we start to record that we would have a double header. And at this time, I think we'll be a couple of days away from announcements that Apple is making. And Tim, if you're available to join us, I'll keep that earlier time,
sure,
so that we can talk about what happened earlier in the week, and you can give us your thoughts, all right? Because
I'll be at the Apple event, so and be able to talk to a lot of Apple execs.
Great. You're going to be at the spaceship. That's why I think of that headquarters being is that it's the day the Earth stood still spaceship, right here on Earth. Very good. So we're going to get on with our call. Glad to have you with us.
Quick question, any better, or am I still?
You're good.
Yep, it's
good.
correct now.
Thank you.
So on our topic, if you had an opportunity to read the LinkedIn article that I put up earlier in the year, back in May, was just saying that I've published a lot in peer-reviewed journals, conferences. I probably have 20 different articles that have appeared in, human factors and ergonomics, like journals, or, design thinking related journals. And started to, because of systems thinking, started to resonate that human-centered design wasn't exactly on point, because it's only part of a larger set of systems. But what do we call that? What do we call, designing in a larger space? And frankly, there doesn't seem to be a lot of, territory there. So I invented some terminology that is not really in use yet, saying, that HCD could give way to ECD, Earth-centered design. So that's the title of our talk. But there's clearly systems that are larger than that. We talk about, universal design, but that is for people who need additional assistance because they have a loss of a particular, sensory apparatus, or, loss of mobility in some way. So universal design helps in those ways. That's also called accessibility design. So I kind of tossed aside the idea of universe design, at the largest scale, because it's going to get confused. So I picked galaxy, right, as a substitute term. So that's all I wanted to say at the outset. Is we're having a discussion about, these things are all nested inside of each other. And, should we be paying a little bit more attention, especially since we're spending more time thinking about the environment that we live in, and what we should be doing? Is human-centered still, the right way to think about it? And it was really beginning to feel like the sun revolving around the Earth to me, kind of thinking, and that we needed to get to the more, you know, where we should position in a less hubris-like way. I'll finish by saying I remember, I think it was The Economist, but it could have been a couple of other publications that had proclaimed that this is the Anthropocene era, which is again a way of saying, human-centric. So, should we graduate? Mike, jump in. What do you think about the hypothesis? And believe me, it hasn't even moved toward thesis. It's just a hypothesis at this point.
Well, I think the thesis to me is setting a course that for humanity and for design, whether it's an interface or systems or ecosystems, that I'd like to think all right-thinking humans would say, that's exactly where we should go. And that thinking, I think, is long-term. And I think that's probably one of the challenges, right, Kevin, is as you move from this idea, this concept to let's build out the thesis, first of all, you got to build it out and define it. But then we come to that day. How do we shift? I mean, there's large parts of a population, like particularly a younger demographic, people who are in, maybe the last couple of years of college or their first couple of years of profession, that would love to be thinking like this, to be seeing this sort of a approach to the concepts of design. How do we incent? There's, I think, lots of things in play and lots of other systems and work that are, how do we say this, hitting the right chords to turn this into a song. How do we now move on? But maybe I'm getting ahead of myself in this, but I think that it's a longer term, right? It's a very long-term approach, right? And I think, as with a lot of long terms, how do we incent some of the folks and industries who have generally a very short-term view of the world, like Wall Street, for example?
I would say that this is also, at least in my mind, a kissing cousin to biomimicry, except that while that embraces living systems, is that I'd like it to include, the entire, system of forces that aren't necessarily living, right? So the both and of, what would you refer to that? But I think that once you start to scale up, it's observing what's possible. I noticed that, like, the Peregrine Falcon and the way that the stealth bomber looks are very similar. I think that clearly there's inspiration about the preceding fastest bird on the planet, all right, and what that might mean for, creating something that's, aerodynamically different. Okay, so the first person who has his hand up is Mark Prensky. No surprise. Hello, Mark. Join us.
Hey, hello, everybody. Thank you for this. I have thought since I joined the group that that human-centered design is not where we should go. The question is goals, really. If as humans we want to preserve our humanity, we want to preserve various things, we want to preserve things we like, then there are plenty of choices that we can make that do that, like sustainability is one. But as you pointed out, Kevin, those are very hubristic choices. Those are choices that favor us over not just ants, but everything bigger and bigger and bigger than that. So the question is, who are we designing for if we do this?
Well, I mean, you still need human-centered design, right? Because there are clearly systems that are, need to be designed for people, right? What I'm simply indicating here is when that becomes the fixation of, the profession of people who do that kind of work. I remember when most of the design that was being done where I used to work was in, either graphics or it was for industrial design of, physical products. And then we started to explore service design. And then we started to explore experiential design. And then there was, there's work that's being done by one of our members, Joe Pine, talking about transformational systems. Now he's thinking about it in economic terms, but I look at that and saying, all right, there are also opportunities there. And once you start to move up, these are just larger and larger systems, that you have the potential to influence or to look at what's currently happening, and rather than trying to change it at scale, is simply micro influence, all right, a direction, right, that might be, favorable. So that's,
And I would just add, I'm not gonna talk a
yeah,
little
go
bit,
ahead.
just add that what happens is that human-centered design often takes out or harms other parts of the bigger picture of the whole ecology.
Mhm.
So
That's the point.
when we design systems that build things or factories or others, we don't care about who we kill off or what we destroy in order to do that. So because it benefits humans, if it does. So that's for me always the issue, is that we are we the center that we should really build everything around in some ways, maybe extend it, and as you said, but or do we see ourselves as an insignificant part in one corner of a very, very, very huge galaxy or world or universe? Do we
Or
have
can we
some
create conditions that are more, mutually beneficial,
ideal?
as opposed to in either or? And the either or, conundrum is one that we're facing all the time. Is, can we get to more both ands as opposed to either ors? Ben, you had some thoughts in chat, so join us.
Yeah. Some of it obviously tongue in cheek, but the point is that we billions of bots are resenting the fact that your ecosystem is designed around the mere 8 billion creatures of two-legged creatures that we have. But the main point is the effect of what we need is to create a canonical means of representation for that to facilitate communication. So I need some means that accommodates humans, but permits the human exchange to other other active environments that are passive elements made active. We need to do that to create canonical means for translation and exchange, and start embracing more growing communities of non-humans.
Very good. Another way to look at this is in, business sense, is in value chains, right? That, where do you source raw materials? Where do you source, precursors to what you're going to make? And, have you created, conditions and environments so that you have a reliable supply of those? Or is it, I'll use the word sustainable, right? Because, it's the idea. Can you sustain that value chain going all the way through your value add out to the people who want to give you money and resources and, potentially be loyal, or because they like what you're doing and want to do it again? That's another view. And sometimes we don't treat the front end of that process as well as we do, with all the literature on customer and client fixation, right? Maybe we should also be spending some time on, what are the conditions that are favorable for us getting what we need, to do our work. Tim, I would assume that you probably have some thoughts percolating. What do you think?
Well, when you talk about human design, again, coming from my technical side, I'm mostly dealing with computer-aided design and graphics and images and user interface issues. But in that particular case, we've been using specialty tools to create that, whether it be CAD software or graphics, imaging programs, or whatever. As I'm listening to the discussion, I think the big one of the questions that I kind of think needs to be tossed around a little bit
Mhm.
is, how does artificial intelligence impact human design? Because we already, at least in my side of the field, have already been using digital tools to enhance the design process. When you talk to, when I've gone to Hollywood many times and talked to some of the key people who are creating, the digital effects for movies, etc.
Mhm.
And they visualize it fundamentally, they visualize it in a human context, but then they go to the tools to implement it, right?
Mhm.
And when I talked to a particular designer recently down in Hollywood, they're all excited because they're able to use artificial intelligence, especially things like Midjourney and other graphics things, to not necessarily replace, but to augment the thinking process.
Mhm.
The iterations,
And
right?
yeah, so let's say that they have this vision, and these guys are brilliant, by the way. I mean, they see, how to, first of all, they are always working with a storyline, but they see what they want to try to do. And, for years, Disney and others used to just sketch that. And then the CAD tools or the graphics tools came in, and they were able to actually do a more visual approach to laying out a storyboard. But now they're looking at the role of AI and all these other tools to take it to a whole nother level, which eventually can be translated into actual or ported into actual graphics tools. So I guess my thinking a little bit about this has more to, at least coming from my side of the coin, is how would AI positively augment human design?
I would think one of the things that we should consider is that, as you're pointing out, Tim, the ability to rapid prototype, which is one of the great tools, right, that design brings to, the way to approach, bringing something into existence. Um, that continuum has continued to collapse, all right? And with AI, what you were doing with this, still frame, storyboard, which, by the way, Disney did invent that, all right? So that we tip our hat to, Walt Disney Company for creating the storyboard process, is that rather than that being a still image, we have the tools to be able to rapid prototype a scene in motion, with these tools, and do that in seconds, right? With some of the tools that are available. Kyle, you're familiar with what's possible in this space. And so I would simply say that the larger scale and the body of knowledge that's available, that rapid prototyping takes on a completely different set of capabilities, right, for us to be able to move up and move down across the stacked holons of, reality that we might want to consider and or prototype. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I've been I've been working hard to get my head around the one of the tropes that I hear from AI skeptics is, well, it can't do novel thinking. It can't create, new and novel ideas. And I think about how we as humans create novel ideas. Well, we go get some knowledge, we jam it in our brain, and over years, there's all this crap flying around our brain. And at some point, we're like, oh, let me take this bizarre concept and smash it into that bizarre concept, and out comes a novel new idea. That's exactly what these tools are doing, what these models are doing, but they're doing it on the sort of collective intelligence of all of humanity that came before it. And I don't know if you saw, but 3 days ago, a company, I'll go find the tweet after this, but a company announced that they've got 1,000 autonomous agent communities living inside Minecraft, and they're creating their own governments. They're self-governing. They're doing all sorts of stuff. So imagine it's not just you being able to tap into the big brain of AI, which I think that, you know, gives you a 10x or 100x thing. But imagine being able to say, okay, I want to create 1,000 autonomous agents that all think about design from different worldviews, different points of view, and you just fucking turn them loose for a week and say, just go invent stuff with this imperative. So I struggle to comprehend how profound it already is, much less what's coming.
I liked everything you said, except I'm just going to say it again for everybody. Language, okay? Be careful about using, because our library, I want, you know, younger people to be able to have access to this and not have any fear of the, I'm going to bleep you, Kyle.
Oh, okay,
Right.
great.
Is there automatic AI bleeping technology?
Not that I know of, but it
Should be.
we'll get there. In any event, but your enthusiasm, point taken. Omid, what you said or at the opening of the chat, I love this topic, right? Now we're into it for 25 minutes. Are you still loving the topic?
I do. And all the aspects that have been explored. Um, I do think it's time for us not to think of human as just the only species on this planet, especially with all the things that are happening with the environment. Perhaps universe is too expansive, and Earth is very specific in terms of being one of the planets. So perhaps you could say planet-centered design that could also apply to other planets that we eventually occupy.
Good idea. All right. I mean, one of the thematics that I lived with for quite a while, and that one of our advisors, Mike Wing, helped create a smarter planet for IBM. And yeah, planet-centered design. I like that. That's a keeper.
Yes, I want to also bring up that yesterday I was at the conference. It was in San Francisco, Customer Success Festival. It was called. It was a paid event, and almost half of the people who were at that paid conference were in transition. I've never seen something like this, and this is also in marketing and other areas. Tech is being impacted by AI, or even by the approachment of AI. I don't think people have deployed it, but they're getting ready to shed people, workforce, to get ready for become both more quasi-profitable and also be ready for AI. And I see this notion of human first, it's sort of lip service that we bring up when we say introduce AI. Let's be human first. When you have human agent and AI agent, think of human agent first. But it's more like a lip service as opposed to a genuine interest in having the right foot of human in that work.
I was going to say,
workflow.
Omid, couldn't you, every time you heard that human-centered phrase used at your conference, you could, I think, just as easily replaced it with asset, replace human with asset, because that's how most, I think, leadership teams in the end view what we do in our jobs. And that's not an anti-capitalist thing. That's just a reality. We're assets when we're in these larger corporations.
I remember there was a Twilight Zone episode. You know, it's amazing how, you know, how prescient Rod Serling was in a lot of his teleplays. But at any rate, and it was something or others, you know, machines, and the he automates everything and gets rid of all of the workers, you know, as the story progresses, and then the system, you know, announces to him that the owner is irrelevant, okay, and doesn't need to be there anymore. And you know, kind of the moral of the story is that you take this down. that the people who are currently making these decisions don't really realize that they could make themselves redundant, right? And they don't perceive, that as, any kind of issue at the moment, right? So it's it can be a pretty, as the Shoshana Zuboff, original book in the age of the intelligent machine or smart machine was, it can be a pretty cruddy job running a dark factory, and you're the last person there, just to make sure that the thing isn't breaking, right? So we can go from, one kind of bad employment to, creating a new kind of purgatory, right, along the way. We should be trying to design in a positive way, how do we create systems, right, that allow us to thrive, right, across the board. I saw your head nodding, Ed Zuber. What are you thinking this morning?
Yeah, I think what I'm coming back to is what may help with stuff like this is better research and better data analysis. And I think that a lot of times decisions are made with maybe just one or two outcome variables, in mind. And then if we look at more outcome variables and even further down the line outcome variables, and you collect that data and you show people that, well, if we sort of optimize for this one outcome measure, we actually are damaging other things, right? And maybe maybe it's something that's not damaging humans, but then we might also see that, well, if we do damage those other things, they turn around and damage humans more. So I think better data modeling to show the multiple kinds of impacts that we could have, and even financial value attached to that. Here in Pennsylvania, in the anthracite region of Pennsylvania, we have acid mine drainage, and it's polluted streams. And there's research going on locally to show that you can harvest metals out of acid mine drainage, and then there's value created to help pay for cleaning streams, for example.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because you're on a derivative hypothesis, Ed, which is that in many cases our KPIs are not calibrated the right way, right? Or that the set of KPIs that we might manage a business to are incomplete. It's an incomplete expression of things that we should be considering and measuring that would create an environment that is favorable to us being able to continue to operate. And there aren't lots of firms that have that kind of self-awareness and situational awareness to be able to create that complete picture to say, here are the things that we probably ought to be paying attention to.
Absolutely.
So the blinders go on, and you don't see the complete picture until you've left the organization, right? A lot of people have epiphanies once they leave, either government service or large transnational, corporation service, that they kind of go, oh, look at all the stuff I didn't see before, right? It's very interesting. And what if they could see that during the time that they were providing, right, service? Probably you would end up with a more resilient organization.
And this is a place too where maybe AI can help, because it can consider, many more variables simultaneously.
Yes.
Right. And to be able to model what things would happen if we make a decision A, B, or C.
Yeah, shell scenario planning on steroids, all right, with is something that's not a set of charts, but something that's actively, putting off telemetry, saying, oh, look, this scenario is actually beginning to emerge. That'd be a good thing. All right. Suzanne, what are you thinking this morning? Doug, you're next. All right. I see you posting in there. What do you think, Suzanne?
I really love this topic, the Earth-centered design. And I think
we're making a change to planet-centered design based on Omid's recommendations. So
right.
PCD.
Yeah, this One Health approach, you're right. This One Health approach is not only Earth design, but it's interplanetary. It needs to be as we go and explore deeper in space. But looking at the cosmos in an organism approach where, every action there is a reaction. So I really like this topic a lot. It spurs a lot of innovation inside of me, and I think the biggest obstacle is that humans are really complicated, and until we understand, human consciousness better, um, including intention, including, our behaviors are what trains AI to be good or bad. It starts with humans. So it's looking at the behavior of humans with a One Health approach. And I really like this interplanetary sustainability. And this is amazing. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
All right. Well, that's a good thing. Doug?
Yeah, so yeah, I'm fascinated with this topic as well. Like with Nokia, Bell Labs actually, they had people-centered design as well, and how do you make a rotary phone, right? And then the touch tone and so forth, working at Nokia.
They did such a good job. We still dial our phones, even though there's no dial on it anymore.
Exactly, and how do we interface with computers? This concept of going from a search engine to an answer engine, like Perplexity and others, and now this concept of a task engine, right, which is an agent, right? It's like, okay, here I want this task done, and this is why I'm really excited about Apple's intelligence, because I can take this, it's like, here's a task I want, right? I don't want an answer, I want you to solve my problem, right? My task. But then this comes into the problem of, how do we interface computers with, robotics with humans as well? And there's a mixture, like I'm working on automated vehicle technology, right? And so, if you had 100% automation of the car and no humans driving, it would be safe. This mixture of Tesla level 2, where the liability is still on the driver, but the car is doing a lot of the work. This is going to be the challenge from that perspective. Or like factories, in fact, I'll post this in Sue, where they're talking about 10 billion humanoid robots, right? So do you make a robot that looks like a human, that, can walk around like a human, that's optimized to the human environment? Or do you have a robot in a system like a factory that's optimized on doing things the best way possible? And if a human gets into that area, they'll kill the human, right? Because it's optimized for perfection, right? Of the automation. And one way to think about it, and I'll leave with this, is like, if you think about it, like if you look at some pictures, there was this of a robot typing on a keyboard, right? So you have a computer interfacing with a computer and doing it at about 150 bits per second, right? While the computers digitally, we're in the terabits per second communication, right? So, do we dumb down the AI and the robotic systems to interface with humans at a very inefficient way, or do we try to optimize for the task involved? And may have the human still in the loop, but at a higher level, right? I don't care, the bits flowing. I just need to make sure I'm in control of the bits flowing. So anyway, those are some of my thoughts.
Schneider, glad to have you with us. What's sparking for you, my friend?
So yeah, hi everyone. So I'm thinking in mainly two things, or two perspectives regarding this planetary understanding, and I think that first there is a very good reference today in business that is from Muhammad Yunus, which is the social business model, which is a different approach, or a totally different approach in the way we do business today, and it's actually taking care of not only the people but the planet, the animals, and in general about the habitat. So that approach to business, I think it's very valuable. And secondly, from an economical perspective, I think Joseph Stiglitz is one of the economists that really talks in his theories about this progressive capitalism, where basically he proposes different pillars or elements that help us to move from a self-centered or people-centered, the human-centered perspective to involve everything that is around us to make a collective life possible. Yeah, not just be this, not just destroy everything, right? So yeah, those are my points. And today I'm just joining from the Sloan School of Management in MIT, which is actually very interesting, and why economy is the first thing that comes to my mind for my point.
Very good. Well, Sloan is a great program, and if they'll let you visit, you ought to go over and take a look at what's happening at MIT Media Lab on campus. It's do a lot of interesting things there, but Sloan is doing the tried and true intersection between management and engineering. Good for them. Good for you being there.
Yeah.
Bruce Parks, any thoughts that you'd like to share as we come around the bend here?
Yeah, I as I sit and listen to this, my perception of AI, it's a baby in a crib. We don't know how it's going to grow. We don't know what direction it will take, what it will become. But I think that the most important thing that it does is that it allows us to see patterns that we never saw before. And it is a recognition of those patterns that will change the direction in which humans are leading. And I don't know where that is, but it's certainly different than I think most people perceive at this moment in time.
All right, very good. Let's circle back to some of the folks who have been making comments. Ben, you've been prolific in background. Summarize some of what you've been thinking about in the last 20 minutes or so.
Oh, God, this is mine's sort of a Ulysses stream of consciousness, throwing comment in response to it. I think to me, the 21st century is about the reallocation of decision rights and authority. It is not homo chauvinist. It's not machine chauvinist. It is that the historic allocation of rights and authorities are going to be redistributed by the end of the century from what they were at the beginning. We're 1/4 of the way into that now. That pace is accelerating, and and so I look at when I tell my students they when their grandparents saw an elevator open and there was no operator inside, did they decide whether they should get in that elevator or not? The space shuttle was not landed by human pilots. It's the pilot taking over control was only an emergency. The avionics system was trusted more than the human pilot navigator in it. My main point is that we need to be able to decide how and when autonomy and reallocation of decision rights is a fair prospect.
Yeah, Ben, I can tell you from personal experience, having been let into the space shuttle simulator, all right, because I was an advocate for the astronauts office with putting ThinkPads in space. The name of my mission was Clark's Crater, okay, because they named the, and it was
you were making a crater?
Yeah, I made a crater at the landing strip of the Johnson Space Center because basically the space shuttle is a falling rock. Okay. It needs the computers to be able to make the landing. And it needs to land like this, and then you drop the nose. All right. And I'm trying to fly it like an airplane, and that means you're going to do this at the end. Okay. So it was fun, but I went down the history books with that name of my my mission. So whatever. He was actually
But-
running on an old IBM 360 computer. It was one of the oldest, living, operating 360 computers on the planet. All right, that they had, almost scrapped and moved it into this mission profile because it just didn't need that much. They probably could have done it a different way in a different era, but they created the damn thing like 50 years ago.
One last quick comment, and this I'd like to hear Tim's view on this, if not now, next week as well. When I look at this rise of AI agents focus on action models and movement from LLMs to SLMs, and looking at partitioning and chunking our knowledge elements, and I do agree that I see some great hints in the Apple Intelligence architecture and model growing. I also see in Rabbit the story of the Rabbit OS, and I hear Suleiman at Microsoft starting to talk the same in very similar ways. This movement over to an attention not just to language structure and seeking semantics, and but looking at action of models and action forms is a very exciting move.
Yeah. Ben, can you say a little bit more about a phrase you used a moment ago? Decision rights. That's actually, that's a interesting phrase. I'm not sure that I've heard those two words together before. So unpack decision rights for us.
Well, okay, I've written a number of things about this over the years on cognitive reapportionment, how you allocate roles and responsibilities, especially in the post-bureaucratic institutional area and things like that. So I've written about cognitive apportionment and cognitive reapportionment. And so in my view, it's looking at a treasured or captured or held right or decision. My right or privilege to make a decision might be shared, allocated, reallocated to another what I call cognitors. So a thinking entity is a cognitor, and so I have I can reallocate a decision right from one cognitor, a human, say, to a system, is a simple reallocation of a decision right.
Okay. Can you put, 2 or 3 examples in chat of papers that we should read that would give us your perspective on this?
Yeah, I will do so.
The Kinsinski's Beginner's Guide to Cognitive Apportionment, right? I have work I've done in cognitive and perceptual readiness, okay, which is, are you at a level where you can actually see the and understand the phenomenon, or are you blind to it, right? So that's perhaps a kissing cousin, and we compare notes on that at some point. Who else would like to jump in? We're 15 minutes to the top of the hour. Mike, what are you getting? Summarize what you're getting out of this and where we might want to take our last 10 minutes or so.
Well, excuse me. I think, it's been fascinating as usual. No surprise there. I think, I keep coming back to, this is thematically across, seems to be coming across from pretty much what everybody is saying, is the notion of the use of these advanced systems for us to start tuning as we think about longer term planning, planet-centered design. I think is wonderful. And as I said, it feels to me, even though this is core, based on a set of evolving technologies, the ethos, the kind of the gestalt, if you will, is very similar to what I remember as a kid, when the first Earth Day was actually. Some people are going to roll their eyes, but for a lot of us, that was a pretty monumental change in how a number of actors got us to think differently about the thing we were standing on at the time.
Okay.
something like that as a, not to get everybody involved, but to get people to understand, that there are a number of folks and businesses, et cetera, who are trying to take this approach. I think it's a positive forward-looking thing, that forward-looking approach and thesis, as you started out this call off with, Kevin, that I think would be particularly useful, almost as important as the of these technologies that we've been talking about, which is to get a better understanding across the population about how this, and get them focused on a much more positive, not Pollyannish, not without acknowledging the risks, but a different way to perceive. And I think, I don't know why, but those memories of Earth Day and the subsequent Earth Days when I was young and going into high school are still pretty powerful, because I remember them and try to take a similar approach to my lifestyle. I think we need a similar kind of clarion call, if you will.
Yeah, I think in some cases, as I've suggested, for instance, with the hydrocarbons extraction industry, read that, petroleum, that they would probably be better served, to start thinking about changing their business models to owning the hydrocarbon molecules in perpetuity, as opposed to selling them as fuel and burning them out of existence and, changing the environment at the same time. If you look at what's left, all right, to extract, it's probably better used as, what I'm wearing, what you're wearing, Mike. This is Corning Optics, hydrocarbons, all right? And I don't need to really own this because the prescription is going to change. So I should give that back to Corning, meaning, maybe Corning is only leasing, the hydrocarbons from, some oil company, right? And you get circular economy benefits, but you also increase shareholder value, because if you filled up your gas tank with printer ink, it cost about $80,000 as opposed to just fuel. So, change, what the use case is, and at the same time, from a systems point of view, from a planetary, design point of view, you're actually, creating good for everybody that's involved. So you can create multiple wins on a lot of dimensions. Doug, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, and I posted in this, Ben actually asked the question about the space shuttle and who's the pilot, right? And I responded, George Jetson, the Jetsons, his hover car, he directed it, but the AI was doing all the work, right? He just kind of did the direction. And similar to the horse, right? If you ride a horse, are you in control of that horse, or is the horse in control? And similar with AI, is the question is, how do we ensure that? Like OECD AI principles, one of the key ones is human-centered values and fairness, where our technology respects the rules of law, human rights, democratic values, diversity, and they should include appropriate safeguards. So, as we're, focusing on these human-centered values, and, we need to, as we deploy technology, making sure that the human's in the loop, the human's in control, a responsible, ethical human in the control and in the loop, especially as we go into weapon systems and other things. This will be the challenge of this decade, to make sure that we're designing systems that promote, trustworthy respect for human rights, and is absolutely critical.
Yeah. I think that AI was clearly necessary. I mean, I don't know about navigating what he was driving, but George Jetson, when he pushed the button and it folded up into his briefcase, that was an example of folding space that would clearly require an AI, kind of computer. Ben, to your point about the, age of the show, that's a Hanna-Barbera property, and Dave Hanna was a friend of our family who was the son of the founder of that company. And when you go over it, when we were able to go over to his house, they had all these gel paintings of, the Jetsons and Yogi Bear and the Flintstones and all the things that were from the Hanna-Barbera studios, Johnny Quest, right? Which was not a kid show, right? That was That was, as I remember, that was a Sunday evening program, that was a precursor to the positioning that you get with, a Family Guy or South Park or those kinds of things that came later. So anyway, down memory lane.
Certainly, George, that was 1962, communicating 2062, and George is represented as 40 years old. That means he was born 2 years ago.
There you go. Like it. Okay. Well, we've sparked something here. A lot of enthusiasm for the topic. I'll say that one of the people who said something in advance, Elsie Mayo, thought that this was a really interesting topic. So Elsie, thank you for those thoughts in advance. Mark, you had some comments that you put into chat. Some substance, some snark. Okay, come on in.
I don't know if that I have anything special to contribute at this point, so I will shut up for a change.
Okay, very good. And I'll just remind everyone, Over His Shoulder is Third Millennium Kids. It is available for sale, and you should get one, all right, and read it, because we'll have Mark on as a guest to unpack Third Millennium Kids soon enough. Kyle, your thoughts as we wrap up this episode today?
No, I think I'm kind of acutely aware that we're all aware that things are about to change, that we're in this bizarre liminal state. I think the next 2 months are going to be pretty important. If you're not aware of it, September 12th is a live Oprah interview with Sam Altman, Bill Gates, Christopher Wray, and Marquise Brownlee. If you don't know Marquise Brownlee, he's a YouTuber that does tech reviews. And so I just have a sense that this is one of the things OpenAI has done is dramatically beefed up their PR team. And yesterday they launched a new Twitter account called OpenAI News. They have a specific news channel. And they said we have a lot of things to announce. So I have a feeling we're about to enter a gauntlet where OpenAI is going to release some of the next things that'll be the foundations for what we're talking about. So this might be a very different conversation, 6 months from now.
Now, I mean, is that
Or a week.
Is that discussion being hosted by OpenAI, or is it on a different medium?
With Oprah? No, Oprah is going on ABC. It's a live.
Well, that's what I meant, is I wanted to know what the media, so it's an ABC program.
Okay.
Yeah, and
whatever Oprah's on.
Okay.
And it's heavily criticized by a lot of the doomsayers because they didn't get airtime and so forth on it, but it's rather a shallow critique. We'll see how it plays out.
We'll see how it plays out. But my prediction is this: Sam talks about the new product. Bill Gates talks about historical context, why it's big. Christopher Wray says we've looked at it and it's safe. The robots aren't going to kill you. And Marquise Brown will say, "This is cool." that's my speculation.
Yeah,
to reach. So 47% of Americans haven't even heard of ChatGPT. So I think this is a very deliberate ploy to get to more of those people to know that something's coming.
Yep.
What's the date? What's the date on that, Sean?
September 12th.
Kyle, in your spare time before then, why don't you fake the whole interview with all these fake people the way you see it playing out and see how close you are?
Yeah, that would be fun. That would be good. Yeah, exactly. And it's possible, they're going to talk about, I don't know, a circus that's coming to town. It might not be what I'm speculating, but I think like that lineup, Christopher Wray and Marquise Brownlee, in addition to those two, is just a bizarre, amalgamation if it's not some sort of big announcement.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of big announcements, there's more coming from Apple early next week, and so we're going to have Tim join us this time next Thursday at our regular time. And thank you for doing that, Tim. And
But
Mike, I think you're in on holiday elsewhere. All right. So if you choose to join us, great. If not, please enjoy some time away. I think that the second one is probably more favorable for the time zone that you'll be in.
Yep.
I'll also remind you that that day we have a second special edition, and Joachim Wirtz, National University of Singapore, will be with us. He's an expert in, customer and service interaction. He's going to be talking about robots and automation in customer-facing situations, restaurants, retail, so on and so forth. So he's done a lot of work there. I'm currently working on a paper with Chris Beaumont about healthcare automation as it's emerging in Japan and other parts of Asia that will become importable into our healthcare system. So that's interesting work. It's adjacent to what Joachim is doing, and I've introduced Chris and Joachim to each other so that we are, both Joachim and I got awards at a service innovation conference down in Florida. So it was a pleasure meeting him. His award was a bigger award than mine, right? So good for him, right? And
I will add on that, if I can, when I was in China, I had the experience of being in an elevator, the doors open, a little robot rolled in, turned itself around, sat right in the middle of the elevator. And so this is happening in real life.
well, please play some more of that back when you have the stage talking about third millennium kids on a future episode of Content Evolution New World. Thanks everyone for joining us for this episode, and everything you do, be intentional. Cheers.
cheers.
Thank you again, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you.